Hi, Samantha. I'm Haley Seglia, one of the school social workers at Fairfield Ward High School. Thanks for having me do this with you.
Thanks for having me come in.
Absolutely.
So, what do you know of mental illness in general?
Well, mental illness is a big topic, and lots of people want to shy away from it because of the stigma that's related to it. But mental illness is something that's becoming more and more researched. My answer's going to be totally different. More and more researched because more and more people are either struggling with mental illness or more people are coming forward saying that they're struggling. Mental illness can affect anybody. You don't have to have genetics in your family in order to be faced with mental illness. It could be situations or things that we go through. And I would say the increase in mental illness has to do with the probably a time on social media, the increased comparisons that we have, the increased pressures socially, economically, in the fields of work, and even education. It can be really stressful to know what to really do, and that could affect our mental illness. Any other questions about that?
No.
Okay.
Thanks. What are some myths about mental illness that you are aware of?
That women have more mental illness than men. I don't think that's true. I don't know what the statistic is, but I know that it's probably balanced on both sides. Mm-hmm. That men are more aggressive when they're mentally ill than women are, and I don't agree. I think that, mental illness affects people not based on gender. That it's fake and that people can just get over it. But, things like anxiety and depression, which maybe someone is seeming like they're feeling sorry for themselves, they really genuinely probably are. And they're very difficult to overcome. Other stigmas, that it's because they come from a bad home or upbringing, that someone in your family must have mental illness for you to have it. That's not always true. I'm trying to remember other ones, but there's so many. Mm-hmm. There's so many.
How do you think the media portrays mental illness?
It depends on what you're watching. It depends on who's sharing it. I think mental illness is way more advertised in the last maybe 5 to 10 years. There's much more about psychotropic medications, about diagnoses and suicide hotlines. It's just something that's talked about, which I think there's beauty in that, because people who are suffering quietly may get information on TV and then be able to go and get support. I think the other side of it, which is not always the best, is that stigma can feel even more magnified. And some of these new movies and TV series that come out, highlight mental health in a very confusing way. And, there's the situations of someone who is maybe dealing with the onset of mental illness, who's young and maybe their brains aren't fully developed yet, are now exposed to information through social media or TV, and they're now thinking of doing things that maybe they wouldn't have thought about prior, or have more judgments toward themselves. But my hope is that social media or just media in general, can be a way to educate the population about mental illness being something that all of us can face at some point in our lives.
Okay, you already answered this one. Mm-hmm. What shows or movies or books do you know of that treat mental illness especially badly?
Well, I know there's a lot of controversy around the 13 Reasons that just came out. And I haven't finished the series, but I think we can go over all different things that come up in there, from self-injurious behavior to bullying to a lot of things. And I think different people are going to have different angles on it. There's a lot of TV shows. The Affair actually is one, which just makes this person look like they're losing their minds because they're amongst an affair. Other shows like Bloodline, where there's a lot of secrets within a family, alcoholism. So I think these are more adult series, but in terms of series that maybe teenagers and college students watch, they're all over the place. So it would be hard to pinpoint, a definitive list. So those are just a few that came up.
And on the flip side, do you know one that's that shows it in especially a positive light?
I think there are a lot that show things in a positive light. I think there were some moments in 13 Reasons that maybe showed, you know, the idea of having a community that wanted to be helpful. I don't even know if that's accurate because I haven't done the series. So and it's controversial, so I'm very concerned about like sharing about that. It's not really mental illness, but I find Parenthood is so beautiful as to how it talks about autism and how, you know, families and children with autism can really do beautifully in life and have communities and supports around them, though autism is not per se mental illness. There's some other shows, and I can't remember what it's called, but a girl who was really bullied for being overweight. I forget what that show was called, and it was just so great, and how she came to like know herself because she had a school counselor, and then the school counselor got her parents to really know what was going on for her, and she got into therapy, and she was able to, she didn't even lose weight. She was able to just accept herself the way that she was, which was great, and she went on to be an advocate for other girls. And then there's another woman that does a lot of like guest talks and things like that. So there's a lot of motivational speakers too, along with a lot of TV shows.
So have you seen the media affect how kids treat one another?
Yeah, another great question. Really well done. Yeah, I mean, back to 13 Reasons, right? There was a lot of mistreatment in that series, and you know, it's hard to know, you know, what other people take from it, people your age, but I would imagine that a lot of things were like, okay, if they're doing it, then maybe this is okay, and it's just not okay. You know, and there's a lot of shows, right, and video games that are based off things that are sexualized or aggressive or concerning in that matter, so I think it's a very confusing world in the media to live in.
If there's one thing you would want people to know about mental illness, what would that be?
One thing, that they're not alone for someone who has mental illness, and that it's the first step in anyone beginning to feel better is just to reach out for support, but it is probably the hardest step, and that once you take that step over the threshold to requesting support, everything falls into place typically.
And finally, how do you think society as a whole can decrease the stigma around mental illness?
I think society as a whole would benefit from open communication. I think most people don't want to define who they are. There's a fear of being seen, even by our own families. People don't want to be found out. And the reality is if someone actually said, "How are you?" and you said, "Yeah, I'm dealing with, you know, really debilitating anxiety," or "My depression is really keeping me from work," or something like that, it might open the door to that person to say, "Oh my gosh, like you're dealing with that too," or "Hey, I know someone that you can talk to." I think we really would benefit from being more open, but I think people aren't open because they're so worried about the judgment, or is that person going to tell someone? So trust, authenticity, and openness would be ideal. So we'll see if we can get there.
All right, well, that's it. So I want to thank you for letting me interview you, and I will show you the documentary.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you too. Great job.